Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If copy system in Naruto. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 191, System Upgrade Completed. Shin had decided to head for the current battlefield, not just to watch the fireworks but also for one other reason, to see Nagato Uzumaki. If events were playing out like the original timeline, Yahiko should have already formed the Akatsuki by now. Of course, Shin had no interest in Yahiko. The idealistic fool was bound to meet an untimely end. You couldn't just talk your way to world peace without possessing certain main character perks, like Naruto's unstoppable talk no jutsu. If lofty speeches worked that well, the shinobi world would have been peaceful ages ago. With Yahiko out of mind, Shin had set his sights on Nagato, more specifically Nagato's Rinnegan, technically Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan. Shin couldn't help but wonder if Madara might have a stroke if he learned that Shin was dropping by to visit Nagato. Even a hardened schemer like Madara might find it tough to keep his cool. I should head back first and let Tsunade and the others know, Shin thought aloud. They'll only worry if I disappear without warning. He hesitated a moment, then activated Yamatsu Hirasaka and portaled home. It wasn't like they could literally devour him, even if Kushina might try. Ha, and here I thought you weren't coming back, Kushina said crossly the instant Shin reappeared. Shin, you haven't eaten yet, right? I saved some food for you. Makoto asked sweetly, stepping forward with a plate of warm leftovers. Makoto, you're the best, Shin replied, grinning. Then he darted a glance at Tsunade and Kushina. Kushina's brows arched. What's that look for? You want a beating, huh? She raised her fists in mock threat. Maybe just feeling itchy, Tsunade added casually, giving Shin a dangerous sideways glare. Ahem, I didn't mean anything. Shin coughed, quickly taking a seat to tuck into the food. Rule number 1 around here, don't poke the hornet's nest. Although they couldn't really hurt him, he didn't like being hit. And he couldn't fight back against his own women. When he finished, Makoto tidied the plates away like a perfect hostess. Meanwhile, Tsunade and Kushina lounged over cups of tea. Konan, quietly perched nearby, folded her lovely paper creations, an entire menagerie she'd used to decorate the house. Ugh, this tea's so bitter, Kushina complained, setting down her cup. Makoto's tea is much better. She used to hate tea altogether, but with Makoto's skill, she'd gradually become a fan. Blame yourself, Tsunade remarked coolly. You're the one who made it. Lucky me, I didn't volunteer, or you'd be blaming me for it. She tried a sip and cringed, quickly pushing it away. Whatever Kushina had done, it tasted like black coffee times 10. Still, if you brewed it, you shouldn't be complaining, Shin teased. Just tough it out. I tried. It's no use, this tastes awful. Kushina stuck out her tongue in disgust. If there was a single positive thing to say about it, she couldn't find it. Too bitter was too bitter. Want to try it? She shoved the teacup in Shin's direction. I'll pass, he said lightly. No sense punishing himself. Just then, a chime sounded in Shin's mind, except this time, it sounded more like a gentle female voice than an electronic beep. Ding! System upgrade complete. Shin paused. He'd been about to announce his departure for the Land of Rain, but hearing that, he froze. I just remembered something. You guys chat. I'll be back later. He hurried off to his bedroom, ignoring the suspicious look Kushina shot him. Once inside, he locked the door behind him. If the system was truly done upgrading, after all these years, who knew what new goodies it might bestow? That system was, after all, his greatest advantage in this world. He certainly wouldn't have gotten so far without it. System, why did your voice change? Shin asked it mentally. He vividly recalled the old mechanical monotone. Now the voice sounded like a cheerful young woman, a far more pleasant tone. He had to admit he preferred it. What exactly changed with this upgrade? You took your sweet time, 8 years or more, right? He tried not to let the impatience seep into his tone. Master, the system can now merge replication cards. 5 common replicate into 1 advanced. 5 advanced become 1 divine. Shin blinked. Well, that was something. He recalled the simpler times when common cards felt like a godsend. But now, they were practically useless. At least he could now fuse them into better versions. Anything else? No, Master. That's it. If you're not happy, please look forward to the next upgrade. He twitched at that. 8 years for this? Sure, it was nice to have a female voice instead of a robot, but 8 years. Did he expect too much? Still, merging cards could be helpful, especially with how his backlog had grown. So, that's it, huh? He murmured. Anyway, you didn't lose my old cards, right? You can verify your inventory, Master. He opened the system panel. Sure enough. Common Replication Card X7. Advanced Replication Card X4. Divine Replication Card X1. 12 cards in total. The 4 from before, 1 divine, 3 advanced, 1 common, plus 8 more from these missing years. Not too shabby, though he'd hoped in vain for an extra divine from the system's generosity. He noticed that fusing 5 common, 1 advanced, then 5 total advanced, 1 divine meant he could gain a second divine card anytime. System, if I do fuse them, is it instant? He inquired. Yes, Master. Immediate. Shin nodded. Then there was no need to combine them now. He could do it when he needed to. Chapter 192, Returning to the Land of Rain. After finishing his business with the newly upgraded system, Shin stepped out of his room only to be greeted by Kushina's suspicious glare. Shin, what exactly were you doing in there with the door locked? She eyed him warily. You doing something inappropriate? Shin nearly choked on his own breath. I was alone. What do you expect I'd do? Heh, you never know. Thwack! He gave her a light chop to the head, enough force to make Kushina's eyes go wide as a comical lump rose on her skull. Ow, seriously? It's for your own good, Shin said, not the least bit guilty. Anyway, I need to tell you all something. I'm heading off to the Land of Rain for a while. Might take some time before I'm back. That got everyone's attention. Tsunade stopped sipping her tea. Makoto lifted her gaze. Kushina, though still rubbing her head, narrowed her eyes. Why the Land of Rain? Makoto asked. Konoha and Sunagakure are already at war in the Land of Rain, and I plan to check it out. Also, I have some other matters to take care of. Shin shrugged casually. So, who wants to come with me? Not me, Kushina huffed. Tsunade and Makoto exchanged glances. Then Tsunade frowned. War already started? Yeah, do you want to come to the Land of Rain and see it? Shin asked, looking at them. What's there to see? I'm not interested, Tsunade waved dismissively. Makoto looked tempted but was abruptly yanked back by Kushina. Clearly, Kushina wasn't letting her go anywhere. She shot Shin a triumphant grin, like she'd outmaneuvered him somehow. Fine, Shin said, unruffled. Then I'll take Konan. She needs some real combat experience, anyway. He reached for Konan's hand, and in a flash of Yamatsu Hirasaka, the two vanished into a swirling black portal. Gah! Kushina stomped a foot. He took Konan away without even asking her. Kushina, are you regretting not going with Shin now? Tsunade observed, a hint of mischief in her voice. What's there to regret? Kushina muttered, crossing her arms. She refused to admit that it already stung a bit, imagining Shin and Konan traveling together. You're just too stubborn, Tsunade murmured, shaking her head lightly. Meanwhile, Shin had reappeared in the countryside, Konan's hand in his. Rather than teleport directly into the Land of Rain, he decided to head there on foot, traveling at a more measured pace. Along the way, he wanted to encounter some missing Nin or bandits, fodder for Konan to sharpen her skills. She'd never taken a life before, and Shin felt a real shinobi's path inevitably crossed that line. He wanted Conan to face the harsh truth of combat. "Conan, do you miss the land of rain?" he asked as they walked. She shook her head softly. Her old home only held painful memories. Her time there had been shaped by endless war and cruelty. "Alright then, let's find some bandits. It's time for you to experience the real bloodshed," Shin said seriously. Conan's face turned a little pale at his words. Though she'd seen many corpses and the carnage of battle, she had never actually killed anyone herself. This is something every ninja must experience. After all, being a ninja is synonymous with blood and fire, Shin reassured her, holding her hand. The presence of war between Konoha and Sunagakure seemed to have encouraged more mountain bandits and rogue ninjas in the Land of Fire, so it didn't take long for them to encounter some. At first, Conan struggled to hold herself back from getting emotional, but as time passed, she gradually adapted to violence. "Conan, your strength is already among the best in the shinobi world. But remember, never show mercy to your enemies," Shin said seriously. "I understand, Shin nii." Conan nodded, taking his words to heart. They took their time, stopping to clear out ruffians in deserted passes, so it took them nearly half a month to reach the Land of Rain. By then, the war had escalated, with IWA joining the conflict. The Land of Rain had become a double battlefield, Konoha versus Suna on one front, Konoha versus IWA on another. The news of Iwagakure's participation was a severe blow to Konoha. And things didn't stop there. Kirigakure, led by the 4th Mizukage, had also attacked Konoha. Unlike in the original story, the 4th Mizukage wasn't Yagura, the Three-Tails Jinchuriki. The 3rd Mizukage had been killed by Shin, so Yagura couldn't become the 4th Mizukage. 3 of the 4 great villages were attacking Konoha. Only Kumobakure was still on the sidelines. But everyone knew the ambitious Kumobakure would join the war eventually. They just didn't know which side they would choose. In the Second Shinobi World War, IWA had been betrayed by Kumo. Anoki hated Kumo. If it weren't for his desire to take a bite out of Konoha, he would have attacked the Land of Lightning. This country hasn't changed. Shin looked up at the sky. It was raining. Land of Rain was always shrouded in dark clouds. "I'd much rather be in clear skies than in this dreary weather." Shin raised his hand towards the sky. He didn't like this gloomy weather. Shinra Tensei. He unleashed a powerful repulsive force, but he controlled it so it only affected the sky. The clouds above them parted violently, allowing sunlight to break through, and for the first time in ages, the people of the Land of Rain could see the sun again. "That's better. Let's go, Conan." Shin smiled and took Conan's hand. Conan blushed and looked at Shin, her eyes filled with complex emotions. She wasn't a child anymore. The sudden surge of chakra scattered through the area, causing every ninja on the battlefield to momentarily stop and look around, unsure of what had just happened. Shin, however, didn't notice the pause in combat. He simply continued walking toward their next destination. Chapter 193, Copying the Rinnegan. The 9-tomo Rinneten Seigen. Shin nii, why are you asking about the Akatsuki? Is there something wrong with them? Conan tilted her head, looking at Shin in confusion. Initially, she had assumed that Shin's visit to the Land of Rain was because of the ongoing Shinobi World War. But judging from his actions, that didn't seem to be the case. "I just find them interesting. Thought I'd check them out." Shin smiled. "They want to bring peace to the world, huh? A noble dream, sure, but I don't think they'll ever achieve it." Conan wasn't as naive as her original counterpart at this point in the timeline. Having followed Shin for so long, she had seen too much to believe in childish ideals. The Akatsuki's goal was to change the nations, to build a bridge of understanding between people and forge a path to world peace. A nice thought, but utterly impossible. The tangled web of human interests was far too complex. The dream itself was too naive. Of course, dreams were just that, dreams. No matter how unrealistic, people were free to imagine whatever they wanted. Let's meet their leader first. Shin had no real interest in Yahiko's ideals. The reason he came here was for Uzumaki Nagato's Rinnegan. His goal was to replicate the Rinnegan. He had actually wanted to do this for a long time. However, during his trip to the moon, he had replicated the Tensigen instead. Under the influence of the Tensigen, his own Rinnegan awakened naturally, and in the process, his Rinnegan and Tensigen fused together. Now, he possessed the 6-Tomo Rinne Tensigen, far stronger than an ordinary Rinnegan. Even so, he still wanted to replicate the Rinnegan. Nagato had never been able to wield its full power. After all, those weren't his original eyes, they were Uchiha Madara's. His Uzumaki body gave him the stamina to use them, but he couldn't bring out their true potential. For example, Limbo, Border Jail, one of the Rinnegan's most powerful dojutsu. Nagato had never been able to use it. Limbo allowed the user to create invisible shadow clones that could attack or block on their behalf. With only one Rinnegan, Madara could create a single shadow. But with both, that number increased to 4. These Limbo clones were completely undetectable to ordinary people. Only someone with a Rinnegan could see them, and only those who had mastered 6 paths Senjutsu could sense them. And they were immune to all attacks except those imbued with 6 paths power. This ability alone made the Rinnegan worth replicating. Moreover, Shin needed the Rinnegan's ocular energy. Finding Yahiko, the Akatsuki leader, wasn't difficult. Right now, the organization was highly active, frequently helping refugees and aiding the wounded. Simply asking a few people who had been assisted by the Akatsuki was enough to learn their location. Of course, Shin's real target wasn't Yahiko, it was Nagato. But since Nagato never left Yahiko's side, finding Yahiko meant finding Nagato. After some searching, they finally located the Akatsuki's base. The group had dozens of members at this stage, but compared to the future Akatsuki, whose members were all S-rank missing nin, the current members were mostly small fry. The only real threats were Yahiko and Nagato. Yahiko had the strength of an elite jonin, while Nagato was already near the level of a Kage. And if Nagato went all out with his Rinnegan? Even a Kage-level opponent would have no choice but to run for their life. Crack! A branch snapped. The Akatsuki members, who had been resting, immediately tensed, gripping their kunai as they turned toward the sound. Shin emerged from the shadows, walking forward at a leisurely pace, Konan by his side. Under his feet, dry twigs snapped with every step, echoing in the silent night. "Who are you?" Yahiko's expression hardened, his grip tightening around his weapon. Nagato stood behind him, his Rinnegan hidden beneath his hair, staring intently at Shin. "Shin-nii, look at his hair, it's just like yours. He must be an Uzumaki too, right?" Konan's eyes widened in surprise as she looked at Nagato. Shin nodded. Nagato was indeed an Uzumaki. Otherwise, Madara wouldn't have chosen him. Only the Uzumaki's strong life force and chakra could withstand the consumption of using the Rinnegan. Anyone else? Even if they obtained the eyes, they wouldn't be able to use them properly. Nagato? He's your clansman? You have relatives? Yahiko relaxed slightly. Of course, he didn't drop his guard entirely, he wasn't that naive. Nagato shook his head. He didn't recognize Shin and didn't know he had any other relatives. But his mother's maiden name was indeed Uzumaki. System, use the Divine Replication card. Copy all the abilities of the Rinnegan. Shin silently issued the command. He recalled that when he had encountered Uchiha Madara long ago, he had attempted to replicate his Rinnegan, but the system had refused, stating that Madara's Rinnegan had already been transplanted. But now, facing Uzumaki Nagato, the system had no trouble copying it. A surge of awe-inspiring ocular power flowed through Shin's eyes, leaving them with a cool, refreshing clarity as an immense force erupted forth. Instantly, every member of the Akatsuki, including Yahiko and Nagato, collapsed unconscious. The sheer power radiating from Shin had knocked them out on the spot. Konan, standing beside him, was completely unaffected. Shin had subconsciously shielded her from harm. Shin-nii, your eyes, there are 3 more Tomo in them. Conan said in surprise. Each of Shin's eyes had gained 3 additional tomo. Originally, he possessed the 6 tomo Rinneten Seigen. Now, they had evolved into the 9 tomo Rinneten Seigen. Shin smiled. Just as I expected. His goal in replicating the Rinnegan wasn't just to obtain limbo, border jail. He had also wanted to see if he could push his 6 tomo Rinneten Seigen to the next stage. Of course, this was just an experiment. There was no guarantee that replicating the Rinnegan would trigger an evolution. If it failed, Shin wouldn't have lost anything, he would still gain limbo, border jail as a consolation prize. But to his delight, it worked. His ocular power and chakra had soared to a whole new level. It's stronger now, but it's not as good looking. Shin created an ice mirror with ice release and examined his 9 tomo Rinneten Seigen. After a moment, he closed his eyes. 5 seconds later, he reopened them, the tomo had vanished. I think this looks better. What do you think, Conan? Shin asked. I agree. Conan nodded. The Rinneten Seigen without the tomo looked better. Then I'll keep it this way. Though his eyes now appeared like a normal Rinneten Seigen, beneath the surface, they were still the 9 tomo Rinneten Seigen, only the tomo had been hidden. Chapter 194, Conan Strikes. Shin cast a final glance at the unconscious figures of Yahiko and Nagato before turning to leave with Conan. We're just leaving like this? Conan looked at Shin in confusion. They had gone through the trouble of finding the Akatsuki, but now they were leaving without doing anything? It didn't make sense. Our business here is done, Conan. Now, we head to the battlefield. The Rinnegan had been successfully copied, and his 6 tomo Rinneten Seigen had evolved into the 9 tomo Rinneten Seigen. His true objective had been accomplished. As they departed, Shin's gaze flickered toward an ordinary-looking tree in the distance. That was where White Zetsu was hiding. Shin wasn't surprised. Nagato was too important to Madara. He was the key to Madara's revival plan. Of course Madara would keep a close eye on him. Even with the Rinnegan, Nagato had never noticed White Zetsu watching him. The creature's mayfly technique made him practically undetectable. White Zetsu might not have been strong, but when it came to hiding, there were few who could match him. Once Shin and Conan were out of sight, White Zetsu emerged from the ground and approached Nagato, checking his condition. Nagato was fine, just unconscious. Still, White Zetsu had to report back to Madara. It wasn't long before the message reached him. Uzumaki Shin went to see that brat? Madara's killing intent flared. He immediately thought Shin was after his Rinnegan. Madara-sama, Uzumaki Shin didn't lay a hand on Nagato's Rinnegan, White Zetsu reported. I don't know what his motive is, but if he dares touch my Rinnegan, I'll send him to the Pure Land myself. A flicker of crimson light flashed in Madara's eyes. In the dimly lit underground chamber, the eerie glow made him look even more terrifying. If anyone else had been present, they would have been scared half to death. White Zetsu, keep an eye on that brat. If Uzumaki Shin approaches him again, inform me immediately. Understood, Madara-sama. White Zetsu melted back into the ground and disappeared. In the Land of Rain, near the battlefield where Konoha and Suna were locked in combat, Shin and Conan arrived at a vantage point overlooking the chaos. Didn't expect the war to be this intense. Way worse than the Second Shinobi War. Shin stood at a distance, watching as shinobi clashed in a flurry of kunai, shuriken, and jutsu. Explosions erupted across the battlefield. It almost felt like watching a grand battle scene from a movie, except far more real. Shin and I, can you even see what's happening from this distance? Conan looked up at him, frowning. From where they stood, the battlefield was just a blur of movement. She could only make out small, shadowy figures, definitely not enough to discern details. Of course. Shin chuckled. With his 9 tomo Rinneten Seigen, seeing through the chaos was effortless. The battlefield was split between Konoha and Suna. On Konoha's side, Jiraiya was leading the charge as the supreme commander. By now, Jiraiya had fully grown into his Kage level strength, more than capable of holding his own. He had definitely contracted the toads of Mount Mayaboku, though Shin wasn't sure if he had already mastered Sage Mode at this point. Aside from Jiraiya, there was also his student, Namake's Minato. Minato had already made a name for himself. Thanks to the Flying Thunder God technique, he was an absolute menace on the battlefield. Most Jonin couldn't even put up a fight against him. Right now, Minato was one of Konoha's two prodigies, the other being Uzumaki Kai. Even Shin was a little surprised by Kai's progress. He never expected him to grow strong enough to stand alongside Minato. "Conan, go ahead." Shin turned to her with a small smirk. Question mark. Conan tilted her head, utterly confused. "Go have some fun. Show these shinobi what you're made of." Shin ruffled her hair. Conan's cheeks flushed slightly. She wasn't a child anymore, why was he still treating her like one? Still, despite her thoughts, she couldn't help but feel happy. "Which village should I attack?" Conan asked. "It doesn't matter. Just remember they're all your enemies now." It made no difference whether she struck Konoha or Suna. What mattered was using this battle to sharpen her skills. To Shin, both Konoha and Suna were just stepping stones for Conan. "I understand." Conan nodded and used Dance of the Shikigami, the foundation of her paper ninjutsu. She sprouted wings made of paper and flew towards the battlefield. Shin stayed behind and watched. Of course, if Conan ever found herself in real danger, he would step in immediately. But he doubted she would need help. She wasn't just a paper ninjutsu user. Paper shuriken. As Conan flew over the battlefield, she hurled a barrage of razor-sharp paper shuriken. Though they were made of paper, they were just as lethal as steel. The shuriken pierced through several enemy shinobi before detonating on impact. Because each shuriken contained explosive tags, the moment they struck, violent explosions erupted across the battlefield. Caught in the sudden blast, several Konoha and Sunanin were torn apart, their bodies reduced to burning shreds. "What the hell? Who is that?" Both Konoha and Suna shinobi snapped their heads upward, their gazes locking onto the airborne figure. Water release, water bullet technique. Conan formed another set of seals, channeling chakra into her hands before firing a volley of high-speed water bullets. Any shinobi hit by these would be either killed or severely injured. This was a powerful water release jutsu developed by Tobarama Senju. Damn it! Who the hell is that woman? Chaos spread across the battlefield. Wait. Is that Conan? Jiraiya, who was fighting Raza, the fourth Kazekage, retreated and looked up at the flying figure, his expression turning grim. Jiraiya had met Conan when she was still a child, he recognized her instantly. But he didn't know that in the original timeline, Conan was supposed to have been his student. Because of Shin, everything had changed. If Conan is here, then that means Uzumaki Shin is nearby. Jiraiya's eyes flickered across the battlefield, scanning for any sign of Shin. Conan wasn't the problem. The real threat was Uzumaki Shin. Jiraiya knew all too well, if Shin had joined this war, Konoha was in serious trouble. Even if he wasn't on Suna's side, his presence alone could shift the balance of power. Chapter 195, Sealing Jutsu, Spatial Lock. Jiraiya scanned the surroundings, searching for Shin. However, his actions angered Raza, the fourth Kazekage. Ignoring an opponent mid-battle was the ultimate insult. Jiraiya's behavior was disrespectful. Raza was naturally furious. Sure, in terms of seniority, he was younger than Jiraiya, but that didn't mean he saw himself as inferior. Their fight so far had been evenly matched, and with magnet release, Raza had even managed to suppress Jiraiya briefly. Dyed magnet release, gold dust great burial. Raza roared, seizing this opening to bury Jiraiya alive. Jiraiya sensed the danger, but it was too late. The gold dust was about to bury him. He didn't even have time to use the body flicker technique to escape. He regretted his carelessness. To be distracted during a fight against a strong opponent was a cardinal sin for a shinobi. Countless shinobi had died because of carelessness. Was he, Jiraiya, about to join their ranks? Just as Jiraiya was about to be buried, Minato suddenly flashed in front of him, grabbing his teacher and teleporting him to safety. "Sensei, are you alright?" Minato asked urgently. "Phew, that was close," Jiraiya exhaled, still shaken. "I never thought I'd have to be saved by my own student." He had barely survived that. Even after escaping the jaws of death, he couldn't shake off the shame. "Sensei, why were you distracted?" Minato asked, his voice filled with concern. If Minato hadn't been worried about him and paying attention, Jiraiya would be dead. "See that girl in the sky? Her name is Konan. She's always with Uzumaki Shin. If she's here, I suspect Shin is likely here too," Jiraiya said seriously. Minato's expression turned complex. Uzumaki Shin, his former classmate from the academy. Back then, Shin never showed outstanding talent, yet now he had become the greatest menace in the shinobi world. "What should we do, Sensei?" Minato asked. "There's nothing we can do," Jiraiya said with a bitter smile. "For now, we leave it to fate." Raza launched another attack. Magnet release, Gold Dust Imperial Funeral. Minato, go complete your mission, I can handle the fourth Kazekage. Jiraiya snapped back to the fight as Raza launched another attack. After experiencing near death once, he wasn't about to get careless again. Shin could wait. For now, surviving Raza was the priority. Konan's paper wings shot out countless paper shuriken, each one imbued with wind-release chakra, making them incredibly sharp. They were as dangerous as real shuriken. "Konan's paper ninjutsu is quite effective against weaker opponents," Shin said as he watched from a distance. It was just like wood release, deep forest emergence, a technique perfect for wiping out small fry. Although paper release wasn't as overwhelming as wood release, it was still incredibly fast. "This is bad, I can't let her keep killing like this." Minato Namikaze, after killing Asuna Jonin, looked up at Konan, his right hand gripping a flying thunder god kunai. Dozens of shinobi had already fallen at Konan's hands, including both Suna and Konoha Nin. Minato couldn't just stand by and watch. He threw the kunai at Konan with all his might, then teleported. Rasengan. He appeared behind Konan, his hand glowing with a blue sphere of spiraling chakra. He thrust the Rasengan towards Konan. A sense of danger washed over him, and he instinctively used the Flying Thunder God technique to escape. The Konan he struck had dispersed into paper, a mere clone rigged with explosive tags. The real Konan stood a short distance away, her expression cold as she watched Minato. "It's you. You know Shin Nii, right?" Konan looked at Minato. She had a good memory. She had met Minato when Shin went to Konoha to collect the Ninetales chakra. "Why are you attacking Konoha shinobi?" Minato asked, his kunai drawn. "Training." Konan's voice was calm, detached. Unlike the warmth she showed Shin, she was cold and indifferent toward others. "Paper rain." Her wings flared open, unleashing a barrage of razor-sharp paper shards, each one laced with explosive tags. Minato quickly took out dozens of Flying Thunder God kunai and threw them at Konan. The kunai scattered around Konan, but none of them hit her. Minato hadn't intended to hit her. Flying Thunder God technique. He teleported behind Konan and attacked with the Rasengan again. Konan spun mid-air, countering with her own Rasengan. Minato's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Konan to react so quickly. Their Rasengan clashed, and Minato was pushed back. He was no match for Konan in a direct confrontation. Konan might be young, but she had been trained by Shin. And after her life was connected to Shin's, her strength had increased significantly. Makoto had awakened the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and Konan had also received great benefits. She had essentially gained the Sage Body. Her chakra reserves were dozens, no, hundreds, of times what they used to be. Her speed, strength, and reaction time had all skyrocketed. "She's younger than me, and already this strong?" Minato's expression turned serious. Konan was the strongest opponent he had ever faced. "Sealing Jutsu, spatial lock," she said. Konan quickly formed hand seals. The space within a 100-meter radius was sealed, no spacetime ninjutsu could be used within this area. This was Shin's custom jutsu designed specifically to counter spacetime ninjutsu users like Minato. Within this 100-meter radius, all spacetime ninjutsu, including summoning jutsu, were unusable. Minato's Flying Thunder God technique was completely sealed. Chapter 196, Bullying a Child Isn't Right. My Flying Thunder God technique no longer works? Minato's forehead was slick with cold sweat. Ever since mastering the Flying Thunder God technique, this was the first time he had encountered a situation where he was completely unable to use it. I have a question. How do you know the Rasengan? Konan didn't attack immediately. She wanted to know how Minato knew the Rasengan. I saw Shin use it before, so I studied it and figured it out. Minato scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. He felt as if he had stolen the technique, but in reality, he had simply developed it through his own understanding. That's all I wanted to ask. Wind style, Rasen Shuriken. A massive shuriken-shaped mass of wind chakra spun rapidly in Konan's hands before she hurled it straight at Minato. Minato's eyes widened. This was the greatest crisis he had ever faced as a shinobi, especially now that his Flying Thunder God technique was sealed. He was still young and inexperienced. He panicked. I have no choice. Body flicker technique. He focused chakra into his legs and moved with incredible speed. Even without the Flying Thunder God technique, he was still fast. That was close. Minato looked at the massive crater created by the Rasen Shuriken, his heart pounding. Was this the advanced version of the Rasengan? TCH, did I tear a muscle? He felt a sharp pain in his legs. He had injured himself with that burst of speed. But he didn't have time to worry about his injuries. Konan attacked again, her paper shuriken flying towards him. She's completely overwhelming Minato, Shin said with a smile as he watched from a distance. But he knew Konan couldn't truly defeat Minato. The spatial lock only sealed a 100-meter radius. Once Minato left this area, he could use his Flying Thunder God technique again. Then Konan wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Spacetime ninjutsu was that powerful. But Shin didn't stop Konan. There was still value in this fight. It would give her valuable experience. Konan charged at Minato with a paper sword. She had learned swordsmanship from Shin, and her skills were decent. Minato, struggling against her fierce assault, was soon forced into purely dodging. Each time he failed to evade in time, another cut was left on his body. At first, he had tried blocking with a kunai only to realize her paper sword could slice straight through it. After that, he didn't dare to clash head-on again. I need to help Minato. Jiraiya, after repelling Raza, saw Minato struggling and couldn't just stand by and watch. Minato was his prized student. There was no way he could just stand by and watch him get beaten down. Summoning Jutsu. Jiraiya slammed his hand on the ground, bringing forth Gamma Bunta from Mount Mayaboku. Bunta, I need you to hold off the fourth Kazekage for a bit. I have to go help Minato. Jiraiya said, then ran towards Minato. Gamma Bunta glared at him. He was supposed to fight a Kage? Jiraiya, I'm going back to Mount Mayaboku if I can't handle him. Gamma Bunta roared in frustration. Naturally, Jiraiya couldn't argue. He wasn't about to let Gamma Bunta die just to delay Raza. All he needed was a little time to extract Minato from the battle, then he'd return. Humph. You think a single toad can stall me? Raza glared at Gamma Bunta. Raza scowled and raised his hand, commanding a tidal wave of golden sand to crash down on Gamma Bunta. Heh, you're gonna regret looking down on me, brat. Gamma Bunta drew his sword and attacked Raza. He was massive, almost as large as a tailed beast. His sword was also huge. Although Raza acted disdainful, he didn't dare underestimate Gamma Bunta. Meanwhile, Jiraiya had arrived at Minato's side. Minato. You okay? Jiraiya asked. Minato was covered in blood, his face pale. I'm fine, sensei. Minato shook his head. He wasn't fatally injured, but he had lost a lot of blood. Conan looked at Jiraiya and Minato, her expression turning serious. She was confident she could defeat Minato alone, as long as he couldn't use his spacetime ninjutsu. But against both Minato and Jiraiya? That was another story. Conan, do you still remember me? Jiraiya asked with a complicated expression. Conan didn't answer, but she nodded slightly. She remembered Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin. Conan, if you try to hurt any Konoha shinobi. Even if we knew each other before, I won't hold back. Jiraiya said seriously. Jiraiya might be a goofball usually, but he was serious when it came to important matters. We were never close to begin with, so there's no need for you to hold back. Conan's voice was as cold as ever. Jiraiya, bullying a child isn't right. Shin's voice suddenly came from behind Jiraiya, startling him. He turned to see Shin. Shin nii. Conan immediately rushed to his side, her expression softening into a rare smile. You did well, Conan. Your strength is now enough to surpass most shinobi in this world. Shin praised her as he lightly patted her head. Shin nii, can you stop patting my head? I'm not a child anymore, Conan said, pouting. Sorry, I'll be careful next time, Shin said with a chuckle. I'm just showing affection. Is that wrong? Hearing that, Conan's face turned red. She lowered her gaze and mumbled softly. There are other ways to show affection. Jiraiya, long time no see, Shin looked at Jiraiya. Oh, and Minato, as well. Speaking of which. How's Uzumaki Akiko doing? As a fellow Uzumaki, I should at least check in. Akiko is fine, Minato said. Shin, what's your purpose here? Jiraiya asked. He wouldn't be able to relax until he knew Shin's intentions. If I had to say. I guess it's to train Conan. Shin raised a hand, intending to pat Conan's head again, but hesitated, remembering her earlier complaint. Conan saw this and, strangely, felt a bit disappointed. Chapter 197, Knowing the Truth but Not Saying It. You had Conan attack Konoha shinobi, just to train her? Jiraiya lowered his head and clenched his fists. More than 10 Konoha shinobi had died because of this. Although it wasn't just Konoha shinobi who died, Jiraiya still couldn't accept it. Neither could Minato. Shin glanced at them and said calmly, I know you're upset, but the weak have no choice. Shin, you used to be a Konoha shinobi. Don't you have any feelings for Konoha? Enough, Jiraiya. I'm not interested in your moral lectures, Shin interrupted. You said it yourself, used to be. I'm no longer with Konoha. Shin interrupted Jiraiya. He could guess what Jiraiya was going to say. Frankly, me not wiping you out is already my greatest kindness. Conan, we're leaving. Shin took Conan's hand and left the battlefield, ignoring Jiraiya and Minato. Sensei, should we stop them? Minato asked, looking at Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked at his student and shook his head with a complicated expression. Minato was unhappy. Many Konoha shinobi had been killed by Conan. Were they just going to let it go? Minato, letting them leave is the best option. Otherwise, more Konoha shinobi will die. Jiraiya said with a wry smile. Even if it made them sick, the bigger picture took priority. And as Shin had said just moments ago, the weak have no choice. As Shin and Conan walked across the battlefield, every single shinobi, Konoha and Suna alike, stepped aside to clear their path. The Reaper. It's the Reaper of the shinobi world. The Harvester of Souls. Some of the older Suna shinobi screamed in terror. Some even threw away their weapons and fled without hesitation. They were terrified of Shin. After all, Suna had suffered the most casualties at Shin's hands during the Second Shinobi World War. The younger generation wasn't as scared, but those who had experienced the previous war couldn't withstand the fear and fled. Shin nii is so amazing. They're all running away just from seeing him. Conan looked at Shin with admiration. Faced with her adoring expression, Shin couldn't help but feel a little pleased. After all, who didn't enjoy being admired? It's nothing to be proud of, scaring a bunch of weaklings, Shin said with a smile. You're saying that, but you're definitely proud of yourself, Shin Nii. Conan looked at him knowingly. Conan, have you heard the saying see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil? Shin pinched her cheek playfully. Ouch. Shin Nii, I was just kidding. Conan pleaded, giving him a pitiful look. Let go, okay? Hoof. My cute little Conan is getting sassier, Shin said, finally releasing her. That's because I've grown up. I'm too old to be called cute now, Shin Nii. You should say I'm beautiful instead. I wasn't talking about your looks. I meant your attitude isn't as cute anymore. Shin flicked her forehead, then left the battlefield with her. I never thought I'd see him on the battlefield again, Chiyo said, calming her racing heart. The moment she caught sight of Uzumaki Shin, her heart had nearly stopped. She had been terrified that he would unleash Susanoo and wipe out everyone in a single slash. Thank goodness he left. Sister, I suggest we call a temporary truce, Ebizo said beside her. He was terrified that any further fighting might bring Shin back. That was the last thing they wanted. They relayed their decision to Raza, the fourth Kazekage, who had no choice but to obey. Raza might be the fourth Kazekage, the leader of Suna, but his influence was still less than Chiyo's and Ebizo's. Raza wasn't afraid of Shin. He hadn't witnessed Shin's power, so he scoffed at those who feared him. Ignorance is bliss. Some people just don't know any better. Shin didn't know what they were thinking. He had already left the battlefield. Shin Nii, where are we going now? Conan asked. Where to? Shin scratched his head. He didn't have a destination. His main goal had been to copy the Rinnegan, and he had already achieved that. Maybe we should head back, he wondered aloud. I don't want to go back yet. Can we stay a bit longer? Conan pleaded, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. Conan didn't want to go back yet. She wanted to spend more time alone with Shin. After all, once they returned, Kushina and the others would monopolize his attention. If you don't want to go back, then tell me where you want to go, Shin said, indulging her a bit. Conan tapped her chin with a finger, deep in thought. But after a while, she still couldn't decide. Well, Shin Nii, I haven't thought of a destination yet. How about we stay in the land of rain for a while and explore, she finally suggested. And you can focus on teaching me some new jutsu. There are still some I haven't learned yet. You can guide me. Shin couldn't refuse her eager request. Alright, let's stay in the land of rain and see what it has to offer, though I don't know what's so interesting about this place. The land of rain wasn't exactly a paradise. In fact, it was the opposite. It was always raining, and its geography alone doomed it to misery. Sandwiched by 3 major countries, it was destined to be a battlefield whenever a war broke out. It wasn't raining now because Shin had dispersed the clouds, but it would eventually return to its usual gloomy weather. So, Conan, what exactly do you want me to teach you? Shin asked as they walked, holding her hand. I want to learn Sage Mode, Conan replied, her eyes shining with determination. Kushina, Makoto, and Tsunade had all mastered it, so of course, Conan wanted to learn it too. Chapter 198, Conan is too cute to bully. Time flew by. Shin and Conan had been in the land of rain for half a month, and today, Shin encountered an acquaintance. It really is you, Nawaki. I thought I was mistaken. Shin and Conan were sitting in a humble ramen shop, across from Nawaki. Shin, what are you doing in the land of rain? Nawaki was both surprised and delighted to see him, but at the same time, confused. He couldn't fathom why Shin would be here in a war-torn country. I had some business here. It's done now, but Conan wanted to stay in the land of rain for a while, so we're still here, Shin explained with a casual shrug. Oh, I see, Nawaki nodded, accepting the explanation easily. What about you? The land of rain is in the middle of a war. Why are you here? Shin asked, turning the question back on Nawaki. I'm here because of Uzumaki Kai, Nawaki replied, his fists clenching at the mention of the name. He couldn't forgive Kai for almost killing him. He had come to the land of rain after hearing that Kai was here. I see. You still haven't gotten your revenge? That's, well, disappointing isn't quite the word, but you know what I mean. I heard Kai is quite strong now. It might be tough to get your revenge. Shin looked at Nawaki appraisingly. It had been a long time since he last saw Nawaki, so he wasn't sure how much he had improved. Though he could sense that Nawaki had a large chakra reserve, battle prowess was another matter entirely. You sure you don't want my help? Considering I'm practically your brother-in-law, it's only right for me to help you, Shin offered, a mischievous glint in his eyes. What? Nawaki shot up from his seat, staring at Shin with wide eyes. What's with the reaction? Shin asked, bemused. How can I not be surprised? Nawaki looked at Shin with a mix of admiration and disbelief, as if he were looking at a living legend. He couldn't believe Shin had managed to win over his sister. Originally, he had thought Tsunade would be single for life. So, do you want my help or not? If I step in, taking down Uzumaki Kai would be a piece of cake. Shin offered again, leaning back with a confident smirk. Nawaki hesitated, then shook his head. No, thank you. I want to handle this myself. If he had wanted someone else to do it, Uzumaki Kai would have been dead already. Tsunade alone could have ended him. But Nawaki had always insisted on settling the score personally. It was a matter of pride. All right. Shin didn't try to persuade him. He could see Nawaki's determination. I'm full. I'll be going now, Shin. Nawaki finished his ramen, paid, and stood up. He still couldn't bring himself to call Shin brother-in-law. It felt awkward. And Shin didn't force him to. All right, be careful. Don't get yourself killed. If you die, Tsunade would be, well, probably heartbroken. Shin said with a playful wink. Nawaki paused, then turned to stare at him. Did you just say probably? Yeah. Probably heartbroken. Or maybe not. She never talks about you. She might have already forgotten you exist. Shin teased, enjoying Nawaki's reaction. Nawaki clutched his chest dramatically and left the ramen shop, pretending to be heartbroken. Shin this ramen is terrible. I don't like it, Conan said after Nawaki left. She had been quiet until now. I don't like it either. No wonder this place is so empty. Let's go. Shin paid and left with Conan, leaving the ramen shop owner fuming. How dare they badmouth his ramen? If he didn't think they were shinobi, he would have fought them. After leaving the shop, Conan patted her stomach. She regretted complaining now. Although the ramen wasn't good, it was still edible. Better than starving. Are you hungry, Conan? Let's go find some animals in the forest, Shin said, pinching her cheek gently. Conan didn't like head pats anymore, so he switched to pinching her cheeks. Conan blushed and lowered her head, avoiding his gaze. Seeing you blush like that makes me want to tease you more, Shin said, poking her cheek playfully. Shin and if you keep doing that, I won't talk to you anymore, Conan said, walking ahead of him and pouting. All right. Just messing with you. How could I bear to bully someone as cute as you? Shin and don't just call me cute out of nowhere. Conan was flustered, her hands fidgeting. She even started walking awkwardly. Shin chuckled and caught up to her. They went into the forest and caught a rabbit, then Shin prepared to roast it. Roasting was the most convenient way to cook in the wild. And Shin liked roasted meat. There aren't many animals in this forest. We spent so long just to find one rabbit, Conan said as she lit a fire with some dry branches. This rabbit is fat enough for us, Shin said, bringing over the cleaned rabbit. After we eat, I'll continue teaching you Sage Mode. I didn't expect you to be learning it so quickly, way faster than Kushina, Tsunade, or Makoto. Really? Conan asked, a bit surprised. Of course. It's only been half a month, and you're already close to mastering it. Shin nodded. Conan was a fast learner because she was diligent. And she was different now. After Shin used the life contract on her, she seemed to have gained the sage body. Her progress in sage mode was much faster. She was already in the final stages and was close to mastering it. Shin spent the afternoon guiding her. Although she hadn't fused Senjutsu chakra yet, she was close. Shin believed she would master sage mode in a few days. It's getting late. Let's rest. Shin said, then used wood release to create a small, cozy cabin. Wood release was truly convenient, especially in the wilderness. He didn't have to worry about sleeping outdoors. He could build a house wherever he went. Chapter 199, even being chopped to pieces would be worth it. I wonder what Kushina and the others are doing. They're probably slacking off now that we're gone. Shin muttered to himself as he sipped the tea Conan had brewed for him. He was sure Kushina and Tsunade weren't training seriously. And Makoto probably couldn't focus on training either, with Kushina and Tsunade around. But it didn't matter. He could protect them if there was any danger. There was nothing in this world that could threaten him now. Even if the Sage of Six Paths, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, was still alive and came looking for trouble, Shin was confident he could take him down. Shin and are you thinking about Tsunade-ne, Kushina-ne, and Makoto-ne? Conan's quiet voice carried a hint of melancholy as she gazed at him. Shin set down his tea and smirked. Conan, you're practically radiating jealousy right now. I just feel a little uncomfortable. Conan wasn't the type to act like a tsundere. If she felt something, she would say it outright. Shin and you're with me right now, but you're still thinking about them. She pursed her lips, her voice barely above a whisper. Shin sighed inwardly. She probably knew she had no real reason to be jealous, but she still couldn't help it. Then how about I only think about you when I'm with you? Shin asked with a smile. Conan's eyes widened as if her brain had short-circuited. She stood frozen, her index fingers fidgeting against each other. Steam practically rose from her head. So she's the type that overheats easily, huh? Conan, your face is so red it looks like I could cook an egg on it. Are you all right? His teasing snapped her out of her daze, though she immediately turned even redder. Thankfully, Conan wasn't as shy as Hinata. Otherwise, she would have fainted. Shin and were you joking just now, or were you serious? She mustered the courage to look straight into his eyes, searching for his answer. Of course I was serious. Her breath hitched. Then. Shin and do you like me? I don't mean the way an older brother likes his little sister. I mean the way you like Makoto-ne and the others. She clenched her fists, nervous but determined to hear the truth. Even though she had always felt that Shin loved her, she feared that he might only see her as a little sister. She wanted him to like her romantically. Of course I do. Shin answered seriously. He did like Conan romantically. Her eyes shimmered. Really? You're not lying? You have to promise me, Shin and She threw herself into his arms, burying her face against his chest. Conan felt so overwhelmed with joy that her body trembled. She didn't have to envy Kushina and Makoto anymore. I would never lie to you, Conan. Shin kissed her forehead gently. Conan tightened her grip on his clothes, her voice barely audible. Then. I want to be with Shin and too. Just like Kushina-ne and Makoto-ne. Conan hid her blushing face in his chest, feeling incredibly embarrassed. She couldn't believe she had said that. Shin was surprised. He and Conan had just established their relationship. Was it too soon? You don't want to? Conan looked up at Shin with disappointment when he didn't answer. It's not that it's not okay, but isn't it a bit too fast? Shin said, stroking her hair. He wanted to, but he also wanted to respect her feelings. Only then can I believe this isn't a dream. Only then will you not abandon me, Shin and Conan said, looking at him with pleading eyes. Abandoning my woman is a grave sin. I would never do that. Conan, have you really made up your mind? Conan nodded shyly. Then you won't regret this? Never. By the time morning came, Conan woke up early out of habit. You're awake. Shin looked at her. He had woken up even earlier. Conan's voice was so soft that Shin almost couldn't hear her. He knew she was shy. I'll go make breakfast. You rest for a bit longer. I'll wake you up when it's ready, Shin said, getting out of bed. Shin let me do it. She tried to sit up, but Shin gently pushed her back down. No, you're not in any condition to cook. Just lie down and rest. He wouldn't let her overexert herself. He went to prepare breakfast. As soon as Shin left the room, a small, blissful smile spread across her lips. She closed her eyes and relaxed, completely at ease. Shin finished making breakfast, but seeing Conan sleeping soundly, he couldn't bring himself to wake her up. Guess I'll let her sleep a little longer. He sat beside her and waited. Conan, as if sensing his presence, reached out and grabbed his hand, as if afraid he would disappear. I'm going to be ripped to shreds by Tsunade and Kushina. Shin muttered to himself. He had slept with Conan without telling them. Makoto might not mind, but Tsunade and Kushina would definitely be angry. He could already imagine the scene, one of them coming at him with a massive boulder, the other swinging a kitchen knife. But looking at Conan, he felt it was worth it, even if he was chopped to pieces. A while later, Conan finally woke up, rubbing her eyes sleepily before glancing around the room. Conan, do you think I'll run away? Shin asked, noticing her gaze. Conan blushed. She was still a bit unsure if this was real. Only by seeing Shin could she believe it. Her wish had finally come true. She was Shin's woman now. Are you hungry? Shin asked. Conan nodded. Then let's eat. Can you get up? Why yes. But, Shin can you leave first? I'm embarrassed. Conan said shyly. Seeing her blushing face, Shin chuckled and left the room. Chapter 200, Are Mangekyo Sharingan being sold in bulk? Conan stepped out of the room, casting a quick glance at Shin before immediately lowering her head. Good thing Kushina, Makoto, and Tsunade aren't here. Otherwise, Conan would probably be so embarrassed she'd pass out, Shin muttered under his breath. Shin what did you say? Conan asked softly, tilting her head. Shin's voice had been too low for her to hear. Nothing. Come on, let's eat, Shin replied casually. Pulling her to the table, he sat down with her. This time, Conan didn't seem as flustered, perhaps she was already getting used to it. Are we continuing training today? Conan asked after finishing breakfast. Nope, let's take a break today. Conan, you don't have to push yourself so hard, you should relax sometimes, Shin said. After taking the day off, the next morning, with Conan fully recovered, Shin led her out. Shin where are we going? Conan asked happily, holding Shin's hand. To check on Nawaki. He went off for revenge, I want to see how he's doing, Shin replied. But, how do we even find him? The Land of Rain might be a small country, but it was still quite large. Just follow me. I can find him. Shin smiled. He had placed a marker on Nawaki. They soon arrived at the battlefield between Konoha and Iwa. They found Nawaki there, fighting a red-haired shinobi. That idiot actually ran straight into the battlefield. Looks like coming here was the right choice, Shin said, looking at Nawaki. Rushing into an active war zone just to get revenge? That was reckless even for Nawaki. Did he not realize Konoha's forces might kill him on sight? Shin should we help him? Conan asked. No, let's wait. Nawaki has a lot of pride, if I interfere, he'll probably just get pissed. We'll only step in if he's in real danger, Shin said, pulling Conan down to sit beside him. From the sidelines, they observed the battle between Nawaki and Uzumaki Kai. Ha! Is that the Mangekyo Sharingan? Shin's eyes widened in surprise. Uzumaki Kai actually had a Mangekyo? For a moment, he thought he was mistaken, but after taking a closer look, there was no doubt those were Mangekyo eyes. Where the hell did he get them? It must be transplanted. Kai had no connection to the Uchiha clan. Shin's first thought was Danzo. Maybe Danzo had given Kai a pair of Sharingan, but then again, would Danzo really be willing to part with something so valuable? At the moment, Uzumaki Kai was completely unaware that he had drawn Shin's attention. He was too focused on fighting Nawaki. Despite all the hardships Nawaki had endured over the years, his strength had grown significantly. Nawaki's strength has reached Kage level. He's quite talented. Given his lineage as Hashirama's grandson, it wasn't surprising. If he hadn't died young in the original timeline, he likely would have become a major pillar of Konoha. And unlike before, Nawaki had survived, albeit as a missing nin. Uzumaki Kai, today I will have my revenge. Nawaki yelled angrily after sending Kai flying with his kunai. He couldn't forgive Kai for almost killing him, even after 10 years. If Kai hadn't been staying in Konoha, Nawaki would have sought revenge long ago. Ha! You think you can take me down? Kai sneered. You're just an idiot who got lucky a few times. You really think you stand a chance? Bastard! Nawaki growled through gritted teeth. Earth release, Earth Dragon Bullet. An enormous dragon made of rock surged toward Kai. Seriously? You think that'll work? Kai dodged the attack effortlessly, flickering between positions with rapid body flickers, his expression filled with disdain. Alright, enough of this. Time to show you what true power looks like. Kai's Mangekyo Sharingan spun rapidly, his voice filled with arrogance. Amaterasu. Nawaki didn't know about Amaterasu, so his right arm was instantly engulfed in black flames. These flames are inextinguishable. You'll burn to death. Ha ha ha. Kai laughed maniacally, wiping the blood from his left eye. Of all the possible Mangekyo abilities, you ended up with Amaterasu too? Shin and Konan appeared behind Nawaki. The black flames on his arm were already extinguished. Shin had used Kagetsuchi to control and extinguish them. Kagetsuchi could control the shape of the Amaterasu flames and extinguish them. It was the perfect counter to Amaterasu. Why you're Uzumaki Shin? Kai stammered. TCH. You still recognize me, huh? Not bad, Kai. Shin said. Shin smiled, then pointed at Kai's Mangekyo Sharingan. Where did you get those eyes? Is the Mangekyo Sharingan being sold in bulk these days? Kai scowled, his expression darkening. Oof. And why the hell should I tell you? Shin, what are you doing here? Nawaki asked after treating his burns. You should be glad I'm here. Otherwise, you'd be a pile of ash now. I don't care if you die, but don't make Tsunade sad. What do you mean you don't care if I die? Nawaki said, feeling hurt. You recklessly came to the battlefield. You were practically asking to die, Shin said flatly. Nawaki was a missing nin now. It didn't matter who he was before. He was an enemy to Konoha. And he wasn't friends with IWA either. Coming to the battlefield alone was suicide. He couldn't even defeat Kai. If Shin hadn't intervened, he would be dead now. Nawaki scratched his head. He hadn't planned on fighting Kai here, but he couldn't control his anger when he saw him. How did you extinguish my Amaterasu? Kai suddenly asked Shin. Want to know? I can tell you. But first, tell me where you got your Mangekyo Sharingan from. Then I might consider telling you. Shin said, looking at Kai's eyes. He was truly curious. That wraps up this part of What If Copy System in Naruto. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.